Alright guys, round 2 of upgrading my LCT AK G04, installing the Gate Titan MOSFET, baby! Right here I have the bottom receiver with the gearbox in it. If you're wondering how I took off the front receiver and the barrel, check out my first upgrade video. Link will be in the description below or in the tag in the top right corner of this video right now. What I'm going to be doing in this video is removing the gearbox, opening it up, and putting in the Gate Titan version 3 MOSFET. I do want to say really quick, if you have not already, please make sure to subscribe to my channel to catch all my video drops. I have a whole grip of videos lined up to be coming out within the next 3 weeks and beyond. I'm very close to hitting my subscriber goal for this year, so all your support is very appreciated. Thanks guys. So that being said, let's jump into this. First, we will remove the pistol grip with a flathead screwdriver. That should slide off nice and easy like. Put that aside. Next, we will remove the selector switch. We will need to turn this plate right here. If it is loose enough, you can do it by hand, but you might need to get some pliers to grip it and turn it off. There's a little brass cylinder in here that you do not want to lose. You can keep those together and move those to the side. From here, the gearbox should slide out easily. Next, I will remove the selector switch components and put those to the side. From here, we're going to remove the 2 Phillips screws holding the motor cage to the gearbox, unscrew those, and move them with the motor to the side. Make sure to detach both positive and negative wire connectors to the motor before detaching it from the gearbox. Next, we will remove the final selector components that is screwed into the gearbox, pull those apart and move that to the side. Okay, the next move for this LCT AK G04 will be to remove the spring with the quick spring release at the back of the gearbox, and that can be easily done with a flathead screwdriver. Be careful pulling that out and move that to the side. Next, we will remove the top clamp on the gearbox. This step can be kind of a pain, so take your time and be careful. I do this by placing a flathead on the back and lightly hammering it down. Make sure to not damage your air nozzle by doing this if you place your gearbox downward like I do. I hold the gearbox at the edge of a table and lightly hammer down the clamp, making sure the air nozzle is not being effective. Once it's moved down enough, you should be able to slide this part off, but be very careful with the wires holding it in place. Next, we will remove the 4 Allen screws holding the gearbox together. Once out, we could use a tool to assist prying the gearbox open, then boom, it's open. Some parts may pop out of place when opening the gearbox, and that's okay. Make sure not to lose any parts there. From here, we will remove the cylinder with the cylinder head, piston, tappet plate, all that. There is a spring holding the tappet plate to the gearbox shell. You'll need to be careful and remove that. It's likely the trigger is going to pop out of place when opening the gearbox, so you can just move that aside. Make sure to keep its spring with it. From here, we will pull the trigger switch completely out and move that to the side. The Gate Titan MOSFET comes with wires that will attach to your battery and white bar sensors that will be replacing the trigger switch parts, providing a much smoother function. From here, we could remove the gears from the shell. I unfortunately forgot to film this next removal step because I was a little distracted by my dogs and I wasn't 7 beers deep at all. But you're going to want to remove this screw on the gearbox shell holding the lever down. That moves to function the shooting/selector part in the gearbox. You don't need it when you have the MOSFET in. It's a little part that moves with the sector gear. So move that to the side, put it in the storage bag, and tell it to off. Alright, now we can install. We're going to take the Gate Titan, the larger motherboard, and put that on the one side of the gearbox shell. This should be a seamless fit for most brands, including LCT. But I know sometimes slight modifications to the shell are required for various brands. Make sure to do the placement of this part very slowly, check how it fits, and if you need to, shave or adjust parts in the gearbox shell. Typically though, Gate's version 3 Titan MOSFETs require very little or no modification at all to put it into this shell, but just take this time slow and make sure everything fits and it's down flat and smooth. Once that's nice and snug in place, we can start putting the gears back on. Make sure to test the gear's alignment and make sure that everything is cycling properly. First, we start with the spur gear, then the sector gear, and again, make sure they spin flawlessly through multiple cycles. Next step I took was to place the white sensor strip onto the trigger latch. You want to put that white strip on the inside of the latch facing towards the motherboard. That will sense the trigger pulls, allowing your plastic flinging toy to go pew pew. Make sure to place those on straight and keep them clean. From here, we need to put in place these anti-backlash stickers that come in various thicknesses. They come in 0.15, 0.3, and 0.5 sizes in thickness. I happen to start with the 0.15, the smallest size, to test it out first. I saw that it was too thin, so I moved up to the 0.3 thickness and it was a proper fit. 0.5 was just too thick for this gun. The size that you will require varies from brand to brand. You could then place the trigger spring with the trigger and the trigger latch itself back onto the gearbox shell, make sure everything's lined up properly. I give the trigger a little movement test while holding it in place. Next, we can place on top the small motherboard of the MOSFET. Do that very carefully. Try your best to avoid getting both the boards dirty with grease. I give the gears a little test spin to make sure they're not touching anything and move on to reassembling the cylinder, piston, tappet plate, and the bevel gear and the anti-reverse latch. To the side, I have the cylinder with the air nozzle and the tappet plate already attached. I line the hole in the cylinder head with the nub in the gearbox to make sure that everything's lined up in place and make sure that the tappet place is in its groove. Then we could reconnect the small spring holding the tappet plate to the gearbox shell. I find it best to do this with a very thin screwdriver or small needle nose pliers. Next, I place the anti-reverse latch in with its spring, hold that back a little bit, and get in place the bevel gear on top of that carefully. It's a tight fit, and the anti-reverse latch will try to keep moving in your way, so don't worry about it. It might take you a few times. It took me some time to kind of master this placement. From here, I slide the piston back into the cylinder, make sure it's lined up with its respective grooves. When putting the tappet place back into place, you will want to make sure that the sector gear's sector clip is toward the top of the gear itself, making contact with the tappet plate's little tail fin right here. We can now put the top shell of the gearbox back on, making sure everything is lined up with its proper holes. Take your time doing this, you don't want to knock anything out of alignment. Unfortunately, I unknowingly pulled the gearbox out of camera frame here, but I was slightly adjusting the bevel gear and the anti-reversal latch with a small screwdriver to help it properly align so I can close the gearbox shells. So now we can screw in back the 4 screws in the gearbox shell. Next, we will put the selector plate back on in place, but not before placing another light bar sensor on it. These stickers are marked in the bag, selector plate stickers. You will want to place that on the longer flat part toward the front of the plate. Half will be stuck on the flat part and the other half will be more or less sticking onto the thin plastic top part of the plate. We can now place back on the selector components and align those with the selector plate. Once you align those parts, screw those back together. Next, we will put the motor back on with the motor cage. Again, very easy. We pop it back into the bottom of the gearbox, making sure the 2 holes for the screws are lined up, get those screws back into place, and reconnect the positive red wire with the red tab, and the gearbox's negative wire with the other tab in the bottom of the motor. Next, we need to slide back on the top clamp that also holds the wires from the gearbox in place. This part, I find for LCT version 3 gearboxes, is kind of a bitch. Line it back up on top and lightly, very lightly hammer it down, making sure your wires are safely bundled up and fitting under the side clasps. Make sure to be very cautious with your wires. Also, make sure you have your dust cover button in place at the top of the gearbox before putting this clamp back on. Clamp holds the button in place, and I happen to forgot mine here. I end up putting it on later, you'll see. It's a little much more difficult to do it later. Now we can put our spring back in with the quick spring release. This part is pretty straightforward. From here, we can place the complete gearbox back into the bottom receiver and put back in the selector switch with its screw, tightening that down sturdy and tight, but not too tight. Then pop the pistol grip back on and screw it into the bottom. You can see me struggle here to squeeze my dust cover button back in place. Now, all there's left to do is test fire. Bam, she's good, working like a beautiful machine. This video is only a how-to for installing the Gate Titan, so programming and the functions of the exact MOSFET can be released in a future video. I just wanted to record this and offer any assistance in helping someone install their very own Gate Titan version 3 MOSFET. That's it for this one, guys. I really hope that this was helpful and you enjoyed it. If you did, and it was, please subscribe to my channel and drop this video a like. It helps the algorithm expose my content to other viewers. Again, I'm getting very, very close to hitting my subscriber goal for this year. Thanks to all your guys' support. You're all very appreciated. Again, I hope this helped, but that's it for now, guys. Till next time.
Very nice.
Keep it sexy.